Hello and a warm welcome to a special live episode of The Flying Reporter, coming to you today from Earls Colne Aerodrome in Essex. We're about 12 miles to the west of Colchester. Earls Colne is a former World War II airbase. It was home to the US Air Force between 1942 and 1944. After that, the RAF moved in. It's a fraction of its wartime size today with just one runway. So why am I here? Well, it's because of this. This is the 1942 T6 Harvard, and I've been learning to fly it from here. I've been documenting that little journey in my YouTube videos, and you'll be able to see that in the coming months here on YouTube. Now, Earls Colne, even though it's a small little aerodrome, it's a busy civilian aerodrome now. We've got the air ambulance here, there are private owners, and of course a flying school as well. This is Anglian Flight Centres, the flying school, and they run the aerodrome here. So we'll come inside. I must put my mask on because we're inside. There we go, that's better. I'm going to steam up now with my glasses. And behind the screens here, keeping the staff safe, which is important, is David Dunlop. He's got his cup of tea, look at that. David is the air-to-ground operator here today. Hi David, how's things going?
Hi, not too bad actually. Obviously the weather's holding us up a bit today.
A bit?
Just a bit.
What is the weather like today?
It's about overcast at 500, drizzle. There's even some embedded CBs.
No way,
as well.
That wasn't meant to happen. So nothing flying today?
Nothing has moved at all.
You are not just an air-to-ground operator, you are an ATCO as well.
That's right.
Where do you do that?
Over at Waddisham.
And what goes on there?
Plenty of Army Apaches. The Army don't have their own air traffic controller, so they subcontract out. So there's a few civilians of us working there.
So on a day like today where it's really miserable and wet, do you do anything or do you just drink tea?
Drink tea, drink a lot of tea, and nibble a lot, but otherwise no, just making sure everything's okay, clean the place up here and there.
Excellent. And yeah, I mean, you've got to stay open, haven't you? It's not like, you know, just because it's wet and miserable, you've got to stay open. You've got an ATZ and you have to be here to operate that.
The air pilot states, obviously, that we've got an ATZ active till 1800 and licensed with fire cover. And obviously, we've got the fire, the air ambulance here as well.
Yeah, so I mean, they might go up in sort of suboptimal weather, mightn't they? So yeah, you have to be there for that. Great, David, have a good day. And put the kettle on for me for when we finish, won't you? Okay, we're here for the next 40 minutes or so. I hope you can stay with us for that. And if you have any questions that you want to ask me or any of the people that we're talking to today, I'm steaming up, look, then put those questions in the comments and we'll try and answer them later in the show. So let's take a look at what's coming up.
We'll be jumping into the cockpit of the Harvard to take a close look at the controls and talking about what the aeroplane is like to fly with display pilot Nigel Wilson. I'll give you a preview of how my training in this amazing warbird is going. We practice lazy eights over the Essex countryside. Historian and author Dan Hagedorn, who used to curate the Museum of Flight in America, can tell us all about the history of the Harvard. We'll be choosing which member of the Flying Reporter Supporters Club gets to win a flight experience in this 1942 Advanced Trainer. And if you have any questions you'd like to ask about the aircraft, my training, or warbird flying in general, drop them into the comments and we'll be answering them towards the end of the show.
Well, we've come out here onto the apron again and it's drizzling. It's been really horrible today. Here is the Harvard, of course, that I'm learning to fly, and it looks huge, but actually it doesn't feel as big as it looks when you're in the cockpit. I've got Kevin here now. Kevin Barber is, well, on your signature, on your email, it says head of boring stuff, head of dull, boring stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's not quite true, is it? You run the place here and basically keep everything running smoothly.
I do indeed, yes.
How's it been this year?
It's been challenging, very challenging, obviously with the COVID situation, but we're still here, we're still going, and future's looking bright, really.
And even, I know you were shut pretty much through the lockdown, the first lockdown, but then you opened again. Have you been able to sort of keep going since then, and everything been running like all your normal training and so on?
Yeah, I mean, when the lockdown was over, we opened up again with all the appropriate precautions as per risk assessment, and it all worked quite well. So all the guys were wearing PPE. So we had a really busy summer. Obviously, we shut again for the last lockdown, and we're back open again and just waiting for the weather to sort itself out.
It's typical, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely typical. And what sort of operation is run here? We just heard from David there, you've got the air ambulance here,
Yes.
which I know are very busy normally. I can see rows and rows of aircraft here, so you're quite a busy little aerodrome, aren't you?
We are, yes. I mean, obviously we've got the flying school, the Anglian Flight Centres, which does the basic PPL training. We have the Warbirds here, which are doing the Warbird flights. Obviously, it's got the air ambulance, and we have private aircraft owners here who stable their aircraft here and go flying as and when they can.
I mentioned that you are a former World War II airbase,
Yeah.
and I was looking at some aerial photography where I could see the old aerodrome there, and you really are just a fraction, a little corner of what it was now. But it does you fine, I suppose, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What is the history of the place? And I mentioned it was sort of formed in 1942.
Yeah, I mean, in the early part of the war, the flying fortresses are here, but they're only here for about a month, and then they went off to Rougham.
Mm-hmm.
Then the American Air Force based the Marauders here until the end of the war, and then the RAF took over and based Halifax is here for, I think, about a year, I think it was, until the end of the war.
Now, I've said that I'm learning to fly this. I think you've probably seen some of my landings from your office. It's a bit tricky to fly, I have to say, and I'm nowhere near, ready to go with it yet. But you've flown this too. You've learned to fly this. You've had lessons too.
I have had lessons in it, yes. You're probably doing a lot better than I am, to be
I
perfectly
don't
honest with
believe
you.
that.
Yeah. It's a great aircraft to fly. It's a lovely, light aircraft to fly, and it's incredibly good fun. But I must confess, I don't have much time to get up with it, and I think Nigel's patience with me wears a bit thin sometimes. But no, it's a good aircraft. It's a lovely aircraft to fly.
He is a very, very patient instructor, and
He is, yes,
we've had really good fun, and we'll be sharing a lot of that on YouTube for you in the coming weeks. Now, I'm going to climb into the cockpit now. The rain is just starting again, just typical. And while I get into the cockpit, I want to give you a bit of a preview of how my training has been going. In fact, I'm going to show you what happened on my first lesson. And instructor Nigel Wilson, the patient Nigel Wilson, demonstrated a takeoff here from Earls Colne, and then we headed south to practice some general handling.
It's a wonderful privilege to be given this opportunity to learn to fly the Harvard. I started my T6 training in September and have had 2 lessons in this 1940s Warbird so far. Before jumping into the Harvard, I had to cover the basics of tailwheel flying in the L4 Cub. You can watch that training in previous episodes. I was quite daunted by the size, weight, power and complexity of the Harvard, but my instructor, Nigel Wilson, gave me a thorough briefing and demonstrated a takeoff for me.
Okay, so here we go. So, heels on the floor.
You're doing this one anyway.
I'm going to do this one, that's it. So we've got heels on the floor.
I'll follow you through, yeah.
Follow me through.
Yeah.
We're going to open the power a little tiny
you've
bit.
got aircraft.
That's fine, it's okay. Make sure we're nice and straight, which we are. And then we go all the way up. Get more power, nice and gentle. All good. And up to 35 inches. Got some speed, stick forwards, little bit of right rudder. Keep it nice and straight. Airspeed is alive, 80 we have. Off the ground we go, level. Dab the brakes, you dab the brakes.
I dab the brakes.
Hydraulic power.
Hydraulic power.
Gear up.
Gear up.
All the way up, that's it. Okay, bring the power back to 30 inches.
Yeah.
Bring the throttle back to 2000. And in the meantime, I've got 105. Okay?
Yeah.
After takeoff, we went out to the local area so I could get a feel for how the aeroplane handled.
So just so you get the feel of it,
Yeah.
have a go at pushing the prop up to 2000.
Up to 2000, the prop. Okay, here we go. It's very stiff.
Yeah.
And then it goes a bit too far. There we go. Yeah.
Okay, now back to 1850 again.
1850. Yeah, it's a little bit at a time, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so let's do a 360 round to the left, then off you go. All clear left. And see if we can maintain about 2,000 feet. And just watch the altitude. Very easy to climb. Okay, let's just pop it up to 2,500 so we can just accept the power that we have. We'll just accept the airspeed reduction.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's it. 1,000 feet a minute, 1,500 feet, 2,000 feet a minute you got on here. Like I said, the minimum speed for the aircraft, 100 miles an hour.
Okay.
That is the best glide speed.
Right.
Okay, so I've got control just for a second,
Yeah,
all right?
control.
So I'm going to do something. We're going to do a little manoeuvre, and then I'd like you to do it afterwards, okay?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a lazy 8. So we're all clear to the right. So we're going to bank to the right a little bit steeper, and we're just very gently going to lower the nose. Okay, we're going to get to about 180, and then wings level. And then we're going to pitch up, and we're going to bank to the left. Let the aeroplane do all the work, keeping the ball in the middle. All clear to the left. Speed 120, that's good. And as we come down the other side, I'm going to unbank the aeroplane. And don't let the nose get too steep. 180, and gently pitch up. And bank to the right. So all I'm trying to do is just to get you to have a little bit of a feel of the aeroplane and not to be scared of it. Not that you are, but just to show you it really does do what you ask it to do. Okay? All right, so you've got control.
I've got control.
So we'll do the same again. So down to the right, 180 wings level, and then nose up, bank left. And just try and keep the ball in the middle. That's it, not too far, or we're going. Wings level, wings level. Okay, that's 195. Up we go. Pitch up, pitch up, pitch up. Pitch up some more. Bank left. Hold the nose high, hold it there. Just keep the ball in the middle. Let it come all the way around the corner. Let the aeroplane do all the work. All clear to the left. Coming left. That's it, let the nose drop a little bit, and wings level. Okay?
Yeah.
So you probably noticed the first one you did, you had the nose a little bit too low. We got to nearly 200 miles an hour.
Okay.
It all goes downhill very quickly.
Okay.
Nigel demonstrated the landing configuration and we practiced a go-around, and then we returned to Earls Colne so he could show me a landing.
Okay, so let's drop the gear now, so hydraulic power.
Now up.
And round the corner to the left, downwind, maintain 1,000 feet. Leave the power where it is. Brakes are off, undercarriage is down and locked. Mixture goes rich, push the mixture rich.
Rich.
Going to bring the power back to 20 inches. P's and P's are all okay. Hatches and harnesses are all fine too. Okay, let's go for push power.
Push power.
And 10 degrees, let's go for 20 degrees of flaps.
20 flaps.
Yeah, 20 flaps. Nobody on base leg. Around the corner we go. And we're going to keep it 100. So, carb heats are hot now.
Carb heat hot.
Okay, T's and P's are all good. Stop in direct tray, turning final.
Copy direct tray. Surface wind indicating.
Okay, push power.
Push power.
And the rest of the flaps.
Rest of the flap.
Okay, so let's push the prop forwards now.
Prop forward.
Okay, reds, blues, blue, green. Get more power. $85. Easing the power back a little bit. Down we come. We're going to round out here. And then power off. And then try and find the 3-point attitude. Here we go.
So I'm now sat in the cockpit and the rain has started coming down again, so we're getting absolutely soaked, and my poor camera crews are getting wet as well. This is a Harvard AT-6C, and it was built in Dallas in 1942. Soon it went over to the RAF. It spent a spell after the RAF had it, from the 1950s, in fact, with the South African Air Force. And then in the late 60s, I think it went over to the Portuguese, and they had it, and they were using it through the 70s. We've got Nigel Wilson here with me, who you saw in that video, and gosh, you made flying that look easy.
Practice, that's all it is.
I mean, it is a nice aircraft to fly, actually, isn't it?
It's a lovely aeroplane to fly, but it is a trainer, so it has got some traits that is used in the training regime.
So what are they then, and why was it so good for what it was? We'll find out about the history of it in a minute and how it's fitted into the sort of training. But what is it about the aircraft that makes it a good trainer?
It was a step up from what people learnt to fly on, and its main considerations why they chose it to train is the inertia. It's a big aeroplane, it's a heavy aeroplane. And actually it's a little more awkward to operate on the ground and to manoeuvre on the ground and to handle on the ground, particularly during the takeoff and landing phases of flight, than any of the aeroplanes that people progressed onto. So lots of people say, lots of warbird air pilots say that when you've got a few hours on a Mustang or a Spitfire or a Hurricane or even a Bearcat, you're about ready to fly the Harvard, because it's actually a little bit more difficult and a little bit more challenging on the ground.
What about its specifications then? How fast does it fly? What's the fuel flow and so on?
Okay, so we tend to cruise at a reasonable cruise for what we tend to do for training purposes. So we burn about 26 gallons an hour. That gives us about 3.5 hours endurance on the aeroplane, and we're travelling around about 155 miles an hour. But there's a whole variety of power settings that you can use, and the military provide a very good table of information. And basically the concept is, as you work out how far you want to go, and then you work out what power you need to actually make it to the destination.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to show you around the cockpit here because I've got my little handheld camera, and our first thing I'll show you is the instrument panel. And the first thing that you'll probably notice from that is that it's very different to the sort of standard six-pack that you would expect to find in your normal sort of training aircraft. Because I remember when I sat in here and you were saying, right, look at your airspeed, and you're going, well, where's that? Literally, it's all higgledy-piggledy, actually, isn't it?
It is a little bit. It wasn't until the standardisation came a little later, where you have the standard T panel, as it's called. But the early trainers and even the early warbirds and fighters, they had instruments placed wherever they could fit them into the panel. So it was very non-standard. But you soon get used to it.
Excellent. Looking inside here, it's very metallic. And also quite cavernous underneath. If I sort of pan around here to my feet, you can see that the floor goes down quite a way, and it's all very industrial. All these pipes and wires are sort of visible, yeah, I mean it's quite an odd feeling sitting in here.
As you say, it's a very spacious cockpit, and there's no refinement, there's no carpets or anything, and consequently, you know, that's the reason why we get people to fly flying suits, and we get them to take things out of their pockets, because if you drop something, you're never going to retrieve it in flight, and it's just going to make its way back down to the rear of the aeroplane and risk jamming a control somewhere. So we're quite strict on that.
Talk me through some of the controls then, because I'll just move a little bit so I can get round to see them. Right
at the very back, we've got a little red lever there. That we push that to provide us with hydraulic power, so that provides hydraulics to the systems that need to use it. So that's the flaps and also the undercarriage, which you can probably see there as well with the white levers.
Yeah, the flaps there.
Okay, and undercarriages there. Yeah. And then just behind that we've got the trim, elevator trim and rudder trim as well.
Excellent. And if I just sort of pan up a little bit, here we've got the main sort of power controls here, the throttle, the mixture and the propeller, because this has got a variable pitch propeller, of course. And what you'll notice about this is, you know, firstly how close together they all are, and also how sort of metal and you know, they're very there's lots of sort of jagged edges, actually, aren't there? And I remember when I first flew this, within the first minute, I was bleeding from my knuckles.
Got the Harvard knuckle rash, yeah. And that's to do with the fuel wobble pump, which sits between the trim wheels. And when you operate the wobble pump, you tend to catch your knuckles on the friction nut for the throttle quadrant there.
We've got carb heat down here, right down at the front, and actually it's quite a stretch to get down to it.
It is, especially when you've got seatbelts tightened up, yeah.
Yeah, and you operate it like that for the carb heat. And then just leave me up here on the panel just above us here.
Just above the carb heat, we've got those 3 yellow soldiers. So the far left-hand one is the flap indicator, so you can see what flaps you've got down. And that's from the control that you've just gone past there with the gear lever. And then the other 2, which are indicating down, hopefully at the moment, is the undercarriage. And then we've also got 2 lights associated with that.
That's
as
these
well.
2 here, aren't they?
2 warning lights. That's correct. Yes.
Excellent. Now, obviously got the stick here, and this has got it's got a tail wheel that you can sort of unlatch in a way.
Yeah, that's right. So normally the tail wheel is locked. This is a Harvard 2A or an 86C, but most of the Harvards got modified to a better tail wheel steering mechanism, which came off an 86G. So with the stick in the normal position, the tail wheel is locked in a straight line, and we get about 15 degrees of movement each side of that just by using the rudder. But to unlock the tail wheel, we have to push the elevator fully forward, so the stick goes fully forwards, and that unlocks the tail and becomes effectively a shopping wheel trolley. And that's when it can get interesting if you're not ready for it.
But great for manoeuvring in tight spaces.
Absolutely, yeah, you can turn it on a sixpence, yes.
Yeah. And just looking down to my feet here, we can see the rudder pedals here, but what's interesting about this cockpit is you can't move the seat. So in order to get yourself in the right position, you adjust the pedals. Do you mind me adjusting them?
No, you carry on.
Because I know they're
yeah.
set
so
for you at the moment.
You
push these little paddles in, and then you can, if I do this properly, you can actually move the rudder pedals. And that's probably a bit more comfortable. Have you got shorter legs than me?
Of course.
To a position that's best suited for you. And then the starter down there, there's not a key. I don't know if I just turn around there. You can see that there's a little starter switch, a foot switch.
That's right. So the early Harvards had an inertia start mechanism where they powered up a flywheel either by someone standing on the side of the wing with a crank handle. There's a hole in the side of the fuselage that the crank handle went into. Or it was electrically powered to power up the flywheel, and then the foot switch was used to engage that flywheel onto the engine. Later Harvards and obviously the older ones got modified subsequently, where this actually is a direct drive starter, so it works in a similar vein to most modern aircraft where we start the engine direct from the starter motor.
Excellent. What is it like to fly? Is this your favourite warbird to fly?
It is. It's a lovely, lovely aeroplane. It's big, it's graceful, it's very crisp on the controls, it's very light on the controls as well. And this is one of the reasons why they used it for the warbird training, because it does handle just like a warbird. The only difference is the speed. If you didn't have an airspeed indicator that showed you only doing 155 miles an hour, which is quite quick by normal GA standards, then you could easily be in the cockpit of something faster and even as agile.
Yeah. And what about my training then? Do you think I'm going to be able to crack this fairly soon?
Yeah, you're getting there. That's fine. And we're currently doing, as you know, we finished off by doing some circuits. We need to do a few more circuits, have a look at a few more wheels and bits and pieces, just a little bit more experience, and in particular, when a Harvard lands, you can almost guarantee it's going to swing one way or the other, and the key is catching it early, and that's what the practice is that's required, because if it starts to go too far, then we're going to be in for a bit of a ride.
You're a very brave man, Nigel, I have to say, and very, very calm as an instructor, and I know we've had 2 tailwheel episodes that have gone out already, and everyone's been very complimentary about your style. You're full of encouragement and great fun. We've had a lot of fun actually doing it. I'm sorry about my language in some of them, because when I crash it into the ground, the bleeper machine had to go into overdrive. Nigel, thanks so much. Nigel is a display pilot, actually, and
If you had any questions for Nigel that you wanted to ask him about display pilot, flying warbirds, the Harvard, Anglian Flight Centres, Anglia Warbirds, then drop them in the comments and we'll try and answer those towards the end of the programme. And also coming up, of course, one of my Supporters Club members or Patreon members will be drawn from all of those members, and one of them will get a flight experience in the Harvard, and that draw is coming up very soon. Now, the Harvard, of course, was used to help pilots who were being set up for flying in World War II. It was to train them as part of their process for the training for the war. Let's find out a bit more about the history of the aeroplane, how it sort of fitted in to the training profile, by talking to Dan Hagedorn. Now, Dan is the former curator of the Museum of Flight in Seattle, and he's always been a fan of the Harvard. Dan, the Harvard was designed as an advanced trainer for pilots, wasn't it? What does that actually mean?
Well, I think the phrase is a bit over exaggerated. The original design of the NA-16, from which the Harvard was derived, was for what was termed in this country as a basic trainer. However, I think when it was actually contracted for with North American, it was described as a general purpose advanced trainer.
And so what was it used for exactly? How was it used, and how did it fit into the sort of training profile for pilots?
Well, I think one of the greatest hallmarks of the Harvard series was the fact that it was almost certainly the perfect aircraft at the perfect time. It encompassed all of the attributes of what were essentially contemporary operational aircraft types, so that a pilot advancing through the Allied system of primary, basic, and then advanced training could, upon successful completion of that training syllabus, have a reasonable expectation that he could step into the cockpit of a modern, contemporary single-engine fighter aircraft and feel comfortable at the controls.
And what was the classic pathway that people went on when they were training?
Well, the typical system, I think it was pretty much echoed throughout the Allied training establishment, both with the British Commonwealth Air Training Program as well as the United States Army Air Forces and U.S. Navy training syllabus here in the United States, was an introductory primary phase. In the British Commonwealth nations, that was usually accomplished on de Havilland Tiger Moths or similar aircraft. In the United States, it was usually on Boeing's German PT-17s or some other form of primary trainer. Then if the candidate or the cadet survived that experience and wasn't weeded out, they went on to the basic phase in a slightly more powerful aircraft. In the United States, that was normally a Vultee BT-13 series of aircraft. And then again, if they survived that phase, they advanced into the advanced phase of their training syllabus, which usually consisted of, in this country and most of the British Commonwealth nations, some variant of the North American AT-6 or North American Harvard.
And then from then, where did they go?
Usually they went to, in the case of British Commonwealth nations, they would normally be assigned to an operational training unit, although in early periods of the war, some of them went directly into the cockpits of Hawker Hurricanes, Super Vermine Spitfires, North American P-51s, Mustangs, and so forth.
For its time, when it came onto the production line, was it particularly special, particularly advanced, more powerful? What did it bring that was new?
Well, that was the thing I think that was most important about the AT-6 and Harvard series was this was an aircraft that had a 550 to 600, depending on takeoff power or military power. This was a substantial engine for what was widely regarded as an advanced trainer. It had the ability to carry forward-firing armament, usually two 30 caliber or 303 caliber guns, one firing synchronized through the nose and one in the starboard wing. But it also had the ability to carry a free, flexible gun in the rear cockpit for gunnery training. It could carry light 100-pound bombs under each outer wing panel. The Mexican Air Force, which received a number of AT-6Bs under Lend-Lease, is credited with having sunk a German submarine in the Caribbean with an AT-6B using those 100-pound bombs.
What about its name Harvard? Where does that come from? Does that apply to all its variants? And why Harvard and not Texan in different circumstances?
Well, this is one of the bones I have to pick with a lot of magazines who will, they'll illustrate a photograph of an AT-6D and they'll say, oh, here's an AT-6D Harvard. Sorry, that's an AT-6D Texan. If it is in the British Commonwealth or one of the British Commonwealth Air Forces or was procured by the RAF or the British Purchasing Commission, it was a Harvard.
One of the interesting characteristics of the Harvard is the noise it makes when it passes you. You must have heard it. I'm just going to play a bit now so my viewers can hear it.
Oh, I know that sound perfectly. In fact, when I made my last exit from the Museum of Flight, where I was the honor of being the curator for 8.5 years before I retired, they honored me with a farewell flight from just in front of the museum out of Boeing Field in the back seat of an AT-6A. And I literally flew off into the sunset in that airplane. But as I was taking off, those prop tips went supersonic. And the crowd that was watching me cheered because that was the sound that they were waiting for. It's not mistakable for anything else. It's a very distinctive sound.
And that's what we're hearing, is it? As it goes past, you hear the tips of the propeller.
That's exactly what you're hearing.
And is that can't be unique to the Harvard, surely?
Oh, certainly not. But it's for some reason the characteristics of the airplane seem to accentuate that, even though other airplanes certainly are experiencing the same phenomenon. The Texan, I don't know if it's a configuration, whether it's the round engine, whether it's the cowling, the prop pitch, I don't know. But there's some combination of those things that gives us that unique, almost unduplicated sound.
Well, last call for your questions. If you have any questions you want to ask Nigel about his display flying, about being an instructor, or about the Harvard, make them really difficult questions. Let's put him on the spot. Then put them in your comments now and we'll answer those in a minute. But we do have a special prize draw to do now. Basically, anyone that was subscribed to my supporters club or Patreon membership was entered into a draw last night. We've got those entrants in your bone dome, as you call it, your helmet, your flying helmet. And you're going to pick one now, but you've got to close your eyes so you don't see what you're picking. Have a good rummage in there. Now, the winner of this competition, the winner of this draw, will get an experience flight in the Harvard. You're going to hand that to me here. Oh, okay, here we go. Here is the winner. It is Tim Swallow. Tim Swallow, well done. You are going to get a flight in this wonderful machine. I imagine you're going to be flying it.
I will be, yeah.
Because I think you're the only one here that does properly and well. So Tim, you'll get a 30-minute flight experience. Sorry, an hour's experience in the Harvard, which is about half an hour on the ground, and then the rest, obviously, in the aircraft and flying around. What do you do on these experience flights?
The most important thing is you get hands-on, you get to fly the aeroplane. And if you want to do some aerobatics, we tend to leave that towards the end, but if you fancy some aerobatics, we'll throw that in as well.
We've got some questions coming in now, and keep them coming because we'd love to hear what you've asked. Jess Matthews is asking, how long does it take to train to fly the Harvard? I mean, I've had, 3 hours probably in it or so? About that?
Yeah, probably, maybe a bit longer actually.
So let's say you're a PPL and you want to transition, what would that take?
The important thing to start with is you'd need to have a tailwheel rating to begin with, because trying to learn a tailwheel and the Harvard at the same time is just probably a little step too far. So it really does depend on the individual, that's the important thing. But anywhere sort of 5 to 10 hours to get competent, but then probably you'd need to do a little bit more dual just to satisfy any insurance requirements after that.
Yeah, we're kind of rushing through it, you and me, really, aren't we? Because I think normally you'd probably learn to fly the Tiger Moth or a Cub or something, and you practice on that for a while, get used to tailwheel flying. Yeah. And we've kind of gone straight from vanilla tailwheel into the Harvard.
Yeah, you're right. Normally you need a little bit more than just having got your tail wheel rating. You can then make all of your mistakes on something that's a little bit more forgiving before you step up to something like this.
I think it's Jack is asking, when did you start flying?
I started to fly back in 1985, if people can remember that far back, and I started at Ipswich with Horizon Flying Club. And I think the first thing I did after I got my licence was to do an aerobatics course.
We've got Jeff Matthew asking how much is it to train and how many hours. I know different schools will have different prices, sure. And you might not want to talk about the price, but I mean, if we were to talk about the PPL as an example, because I get asked that a lot, how much does it cost to get your PPL? Minimum 45 hours, is it, for the PPL?
Minimum 45, that's right, yeah.
And you're typically spending what, £180 an hour or something around that, depending on what you're flying in?
Depending what you're flying, and then of course it does vary according to what stage of your training you're at, because you have to go on cross countries, and then there's landing fees at other airfields as well. And then with the circuits as well, you're going to incur a few more takeoffs and landings during one session. So normally I'd say if you budgeted somewhere between sort of £8,500–9,000 total, that's probably the budget you're looking at. But the important thing is you haven't got to find the money all at once. You can just spend a year or 2 years enjoying flying once a week, once every 2 weeks, and just pay as you go.
Dave Lee, I think Dave is actually based here, because that's probably a name you recognise. He's saying, what's the shortest runway you could operate the Harvard from? What are you here, 900 metres?
We're just about 900 metres here. It's ample for the Harvard. I mean, we've operated it at sort of 550, 500 metres. Again, it depends. We do the performance calculations to start with. It depends on the weight mainly, and we're careful about where we operate the Harvard from. But 500 or 600 metres is very happy at. That's not a problem at all.
In the winter, it's difficult. You've got this 10-metre wide hard runway here, which is not particularly good for tailwheel learning, actually, is it? I mean, I suppose it honed your skills, as we found out, but
it does.
I don't think you'd be wanting me to try and land this on that at the moment. No, I didn't think you would. Paul Buckley is asking, how many hours for tailwheel sign-off, and then how many hours for the Harvard? I don't know if we've sort of covered that.
Tailwheel sign-off, strangely there isn't a minimum hours of tailwheel sign-off, but you'll find lots of people and lots of organisation bound around a figure of around about 5 hours, and generally speaking that's the sort of time it takes for someone to do the transition from nose wheel to tailwheel, and to gain enough experience to find out all the little quirks and little nuances that a tailwheel is going to throw at you, so you have a bit of practice at correcting those errors while you've got the luxury of an instructor on board.
Jack, I think we've done Jack's question. Forgive me. We have one there from. Oh gosh, now I've messed my phone up. Let's see here. Who maintains these fabulous machines? Hedge fund asks. Because they can't be the easiest things to maintain. It's not like you can go to the Piper, sort of shop and get a new, I don't know, landing gear for them, is it?
Well, they are still supported by North American Aviation to a certain extent. So any maintenance organisation could look after it. But having said that, if you go to someone that is used to looking after aeroplanes like this, obviously they've got all the knowledge and the know-how and all the little idiosyncrasies of maintaining aeroplanes like this. It's an advantage, so it's going to save you a bit of money in the long run. So that's why we have ours maintained by people who know what they're doing.
James Archer asks, have you had any scary moments in the T6?
Not in the T6. No, we've had system failures. We've had we've had hydraulic failure in it, for example, and things like that. So yes, we've made use of some of the emergency procedures, but that's par for the course for any aeroplane flying.
Nigel, sorry, who is this? This is somebody just saying you're an awesome instructor. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I mean it is worth mentioning, because finding a really good instructor. If you're going to spend the money you're spending on a full course, you need to get on with them and you need to feel comfortable with them. And I've been through multiple instructors, and to be fair, most of them have been brilliant. So how do you get that balance right as an instructor between reassuring, being friendly and funny, but at the same time teaching and being prepared to step in if things go wrong?
Yeah. It's my mantra is you need to learn on the ground and practice in the air. So we do a lot of talking on the ground to learn about the theory and what exactly we're going to be doing in the flight, and then we go and practice it in the air. And as an instructor, you have to let people make mistakes, because that's how people learn the quickest. But at the end of the day, we also need to use the airplane again after the flight. And again, it goes back to the point of making all of your mistakes or making some of your mistakes as best you can while you've got an instructor on board, and particularly after you've got your tailwheel rating, going and doing more tailwheel time yourself. Because when we do the cub, for example, I can afford to let the cub get a little more awry, shall we say, from an arrival before I have to intervene. I have to be a little bit more tighter on the harvard, because you can only let it deviate a small amount before something has to be done, because once it goes past a certain point, then that's when it becomes really interesting.
It was really interesting on, I think, our first flight together in the harbour when I was doing my first takeoff. We just lifted off, and you'd obviously told me to sort of level off to build speed, which I'm familiar with doing in the PA-28. But I overcooked it, and that inertia you were telling about, and we were suddenly heading towards the ground very quickly. Do you remember that? That was the first time that you had to take control.
Well, I tweaked the nose up a little bit, and I think also what it was is you were looking down to find the gear lever to raise the undercarriage.
Yeah.
So you're looking down and you push forward a little tiny bit as well. But it's things that we come to be familiar with and know where things are going to go a little bit amiss, shall we say. So we're just ready for it.
Steve, I don't know if you know the answer to this. Steve Cooper says, do you know how many movements there are at Earls Colne in a, should we say, normal year? Do you happen to know
I've got no idea, I'm afraid, no.
Plain old Ben is asking me, when am I going to be displaying in the Harvard, John? I don't think the insurers are going to allow that to happen. Our plan actually is to, once Nigel is happy with my flying in it, we're going to do a little run, aren't we, down to the White Cliffs of Dover.
Yeah.
With you in the back.
I'm just a passenger.
You're in the back. Nigel's going to assume it for the passenger duties. And I'm going to go down to the White Cliffs of Dover. You're on the way back. You're going to put me through some more aerobatics.
We are.
And then I'm going to land as well. Chris McKenna's asking about G-force. Interesting subject, actually. Any tips on dealing with G-force? I mean, I've had no experience of that. Presumably displaying, you're having to deal with that.
We do, yes. Dealing with G-force is a bit like going to the gym. The more you go to the gym, the more your body gets used to it, and the easier it becomes to go and do those exercises. And G's tolerance is exactly the same. It does diminish over time, so if I haven't displayed for a period of time, my G tolerance will be lower than if I am displaying more regularly. So that's one of the things that we do have to be quite careful of. I mean, the aeroplane itself, it doesn't pull that much G, okay? To somebody else it might seem quite a lot, but we just get used to it. And there's certain things you can do. We don't wear G suits or anything, but there's certain things you can do to help yourself, shall we say.
Morris Moon has asked me a question. Do you just display in the T6, or do you display in other aircraft as well?
I display quite a lot of other aeroplanes. So T6 is one. I've displayed all sorts of stuff. Yak 52. I've displayed the Cub that we were in. There's a Staggerwing, Beach Staggerwing, BE-17 display, as well as the normal stuff like Cessna 152s and other bits and pieces. There's an ME-108 display now and again as well. So there's quite a lot. Chipmunks, formation chipmunks. So quite a lot.
And I think final question, Jean-Jacques is saying, how many T6s are in service? Do you know?
I don't know in total, but I know that this aeroplane is one of only 2 Harvard 2As in the UK, and this is the older one of the 2.
Amazing, and it's a 6C, no.
An AT6C, and when the RAF, when it gets put onto the RAF, it becomes a Harvard, and then an AT6C equated to a Harvard 2A.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think according to the records which I was having a look at, it was originally a Texan when it was in America, because of course they were called a Texan if they were in use by the US forces.
That's right.
And then if they're in the Commonwealth forces here in the RAF, it was a Harvard.
Same aeroplane, different names.
Amazing. Look, thanks for answering those questions.
That's right.
And thanks for having me here, and thanks for being such a great instructor and all those things. Well done to Tim Swallow. Tim, I'll be in touch with you over the coming days to give you details of how you can claim your prize, of course, and you'll be flying with Nigel. It'll be really interesting to hear how you get on. So we'll be in touch with that shortly. Thanks for your questions. Thank you for watching. It's been great to be here at Earls Colne today. My expert team behind the scenes, as you can imagine, have worked extremely hard getting this show on the road, so thanks to them. And thanks to my sponsors, Anglian Warbirds, as well. Without them, I couldn't do what we've done today and many of my other videos. And if you're looking for a Christmas present, then you can buy an experience flight from their website. I'm sure that would be great. That is all from us here. Thank you so much for watching. Keep safe and fly safely, my friends. Bye-bye.